In any discussion of modern conflict, we must first understand the primary tools of long-range power. Missiles are, in essence, self-propelled guided weapons. They are designed to deliver a payload, which can be a conventional explosive or something far more destructive, to a precise target hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Unlike unguided rockets, missiles contain sophisticated guidance systems. These systems use GPS, radar, or heat-seeking technology to navigate terrain and home in on their objective. This precision is what makes them such a formidable instrument of state power, allowing a nation to project force across vast distances without putting its own soldiers in immediate danger. The variety of missiles is vast, each tailored for a specific purpose. Ballistic missiles, for example, are launched on a high arcing trajectory, leaving the atmosphere before re-entering to strike their target at incredible speeds. Cruise missiles, on the other hand, fly low to the ground, hugging the terrain to evade radar detection. There are also anti-ship missiles, designed to destroy naval vessels, and anti-air missiles, meant to shoot down enemy aircraft. The sheer destructive potential contained within these weapons is staggering, capable of crippling military bases, leveling infrastructure, and causing immense civilian casualties in a matter of minutes. Imagine a scenario, however improbable, where a leader like Donald Trump decides to launch these weapons against every other nation. The initial moments of such an attack would be a terrifying display of technological might. From submarines hidden beneath the waves, from silos buried deep in the American heartland, and from aircraft soaring high above the clouds, a torrent of missiles would streak across the sky. The targets would likely be strategic: military command centers, airfields, naval bases, and critical government buildings. The goal would be to deliver a sudden, overwhelming blow, a shock and awe campaign on a global scale, intended to paralyze the world before it could even react. However, launching such an attack is not as simple as pushing a single button. It is a complex, coordinated effort involving thousands of personnel and a vast logistical chain. The launch orders would have to cascade through the chain of command, a process designed with checks and balances to prevent an unauthorized or rash decision. The missiles themselves would need to be fueled, their targets programmed, and their systems checked. In this hypothetical global first strike, the United States would unleash a significant portion of its advanced arsenal, betting everything on the hope that the initial shockwave would be enough to bring the entire world to its knees. No country, not even the most powerful, exists in a vacuum. The moment missiles were launched from the United States, the world would not simply await its fate. Nations around the globe have spent decades and trillions of dollars developing sophisticated missile defense systems. These systems are designed to be a shield against exactly this kind of attack. They work by using powerful radars to detect incoming threats, tracking their trajectories, and then launching interceptor missiles to destroy them in mid-air. We have seen the effectiveness of these systems in recent conflicts, such as Israel's successful interception of massive missile volleys from Iran in 2024. A global attack would trigger a global defense. Countries like Russia, China, and major European powers all possess their own advanced air and missile defense networks. The Russian S-400 and S-500 systems, for instance, are considered some of the most capable in the world. In the face of a universal threat originating from a single source, these disparate systems would be working toward a common goal. Information would be shared, detection data from one nation's satellites could be relayed to another's interceptor batteries, and a patchwork of defensive shields would light up across the planet, all aimed at stopping the incoming American arsenal before it could reach its targets. Beyond technology, the world is bound by a web of political and military alliances. An attack on one NATO member, for example, is considered an attack on all. This principle of collective defense would instantly unite dozens of countries against the aggressor. Formal treaties like NATO and informal partnerships across Asia, Africa, and South America would solidify into a grand coalition. Political leaders who might have been rivals just the day before would find common cause. The United Nations would see an emergency session where the United States would be universally condemned and isolated, facing a unified planet determined to defend itself and retaliate against the unprovoked assault. This united front would move quickly from defense to offense. Submarines from allied nations would receive their own launch orders. Air forces would be scrambled. The remaining American military assets around the world would suddenly find themselves surrounded by hostile forces. Military bases in allied countries like Germany, Japan, or South Korea would be immediately neutralized by their host nations. The attack, intended to project American strength, would instead trigger the complete collapse of its global military posture, leaving it isolated and facing a coordinated counterattack from every direction. The world would not be a passive victim. It would become a unified and formidable adversary. A core reality of modern warfare is that missile stockpiles are finite. No country has an endless supply of these complex and expensive weapons. A nation might have thousands of missiles, but a global attack would deplete that arsenal with astonishing speed. As we saw with Ukraine's use of Western-supplied missiles in late 2024, even a regional conflict can strain supplies, forcing commanders to ration their use carefully. In a scenario where the United States is targeting the entire world, its most advanced long-range missiles would be expended in the opening days, if not hours, of the conflict. The initial barrage would be spectacular, but it would not be sustainable. Once the premier missiles are gone, the ability to strike with precision at great distances diminishes dramatically. The war would then have to be fought with other means. History has shown time and again that air and missile power alone cannot win a war, especially against a determined opponent. The US-led strikes against the Houthis in Yemen, for instance, failed to stop their attacks on Red Sea shipping. To truly defeat and occupy a country, you need ground forces, soldiers who can take and hold territory. An attack on the entire world simultaneously makes this an impossibility. The United States simply does not have enough troops to invade and control every other nation. The global coalition, meanwhile, would begin its counter-offensive. While their own missile stockpiles would also be limited, their combined industrial capacity would far outstrip that of an isolated United States. Factories in Europe, Russia, and Asia would go into overdrive, producing new weapons and munitions. The US, cut off from global supply chains and facing attacks on its own industrial base, would struggle to replenish its spent arsenal. The conflict would quickly shift from a high-tech missile duel to a brutal war of attrition, a contest of manufacturing and resources that the United States, standing alone, could not possibly win. Furthermore, the initial missile strikes would not achieve a decisive victory. While they would cause immense damage, they would not break the will of nearly 200 nations. Instead, such an attack would galvanize them, creating a level of resolve and unity never before seen in human history. Leaders would emerge, populations would rally, and the goal would be singular: the defeat of the aggressor. The war would not end after the first missile exchange. It would only be the beginning of a long, grinding conflict where the initial attacker, having exhausted its best weapons, would be left vulnerable and facing overwhelming odds on every front. The immediate consequence of a global missile war would be the complete and utter collapse of the world economy. Modern civilization is built upon a delicate network of global trade, with goods constantly moving across oceans on massive container ships. One of the first targets in such a conflict would be these vital shipping lanes. As Houthi attacks in the Red Sea demonstrated, even a regional disruption can cause shipping costs to skyrocket and force vessels to take long, expensive detours. A worldwide conflict, with missiles targeting ports and ships in every ocean, would bring maritime trade to a dead halt. This sudden stop in global commerce would trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. The supply of oil and natural gas would be cut off, leading to an energy crisis that would paralyze industries and leave homes without power. Factories would shut down as they ran out of imported raw materials and components. Supermarket shelves would go bare as the international food supply chain breaks. The financial markets would crash instantly, wiping out trillions of dollars in value and making savings worthless. The interconnected global economy, the engine of modern prosperity, would shatter into a million pieces, plunging every nation into a deep and desperate depression. In this shattered world, there would be no winner. The United States, as the instigator, would be completely isolated. Cut off from the world, its economy would crumble just as fast, if not faster, than everyone else's. The immense cost of the war and the destruction from retaliatory strikes would bankrupt the nation. Its people would face the same shortages of food, fuel, and medicine as the rest of the world. The very fabric of society would begin to unravel as the promises of a quick victory give way to the grim reality of a perpetual, unwinnable war and profound economic hardship. Ultimately, a war of this nature is a purely lose-lose scenario. The goal of warfare is typically to achieve a political objective, but a global missile attack would achieve nothing but universal destruction. It would be a descent into a new dark age where nations are shattered, economies are in ruins, and the global order has been replaced by anarchy and survival. The immense human suffering would be beyond calculation. Such an act would be the ultimate folly, a clear demonstration that in the modern interconnected age, a war against the world is simply a war against oneself. Everyone would lose, and the world we know would cease to exist.